Right, this is fun. Ubisoft are doubling down on a practice that historically they're actually kind of terrible at. They basically think that the future of Assassin's Creed is going to be built at least partially on doing remakes. Thing is, though, when you take a look back at their history of remasters and things, especially in Assassin's Creed, it's pretty damn messy. I mean, take a look at the Ezio collection or even the Assassin's Creed 3 remaster, and then the Prince of Persia remaster that just keeps on getting kicked down the road. So the question then, what has actually changed? What are they going to do, and why do they think that this can pay off? And I suppose to give you a bit of a hint, it's going to look like Capcom. They hope. P.S. Here's today's sponsor. So here's the problem. Data leaks all the time, and like vultures looking for a meal, data brokers exist to harvest it. And that means we get spam, or, well, worse. Now, you've got a legal right to have that removed. That is hindered by it taking ages and being hard to monitor. And that's where incogni.com/Bellular News comes in to solve the problem. They automate the entire process for you, and with code Bellular News, you get 60% off an annual plan. Now here's my update. You can see 57 completed requests, 9 in progress, and I've been added to 21 suppression lists, which means that my data won't be picked up by those 21 again. So I'm off to a hell of a start. The good news is they've also shipped support to add even more of your information. So I've added another home address and email to Incogni, and I'll let you know the results from that next month. Now the point is, those brokers are often spooky. The brokers themselves can be data breached, and people can use data from brokers for ill, or at least for things that are annoying, like spam. Like, we do not want to be on those lists, and that's why Incogni is a great service. It takes your data down, and importantly, it keeps it down, because in so many cases, your data just gets slurped up again. Which, of course, is something you don't have to worry about with Incogni. Now, you can try them out with 60% off an annual plan at incogni.com/Bellular News. So, go check them out. With that said, let's get into the video. So their CEO announced this via the bold strategy of an interview with himself. That's just the kind of thing that big companies do for PR. Anyway, in that, basically, we learned things. It may not be yearly as much as they would like that, but essentially the plan is variety between core titles like Shadows and then less expensive ones like, say, Mirage and Hex. And to bridge the gaps, they want to do remakes and follow-ups for older entries in the franchise, essentially bringing them up to modern standards. Now, that they said follow-up is certainly something that's got me thinking. I mean, I don't know how you do that with Ezio, but I could certainly see it for other protagonists. Now, that being said, there is a bit of a problem, and that problem is we've seen their other remakes. The most notable one, of course, is the Prince of Persia remake that has just been in development for years, essentially development hell. What happened is Ubisoft leadership gave the IP to a studio who had only done support work. They seemingly didn't give them enough guidance. That led to public materials being released that people essentially just laughed at, and, well, now the project is being handled by other people within Ubisoft, I believe. And, yeah, it just keeps on getting delayed. Another thing that is going on is a Splinter Cell revival, but again, we have heard, like, basically nothing about that. And then within the Assassin's Creed franchise, their re-releases have not been that successful. As an example, right, they bundled Assassin's Creed 3 and Liberation in with the Ultimate Edition for Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Problem is, though, here's the critic scores, which, yeah, are really not great. Now, these were pretty damn weird because functionally they were the same games. They had a graphical update, but it was an update, not an overhaul. And that basically meant that while you could compare them, and you could see that some things technically may be a little bit more expensive to run, a little bit more advanced, well, a lot of the artistry wasn't really there as much. And this is, I mean, especially with lighting, this is a critique that we keep on having with remasters of games. Plus, perception-wise, these felt a little bit cheap to me because they came off as just being experiments to sell an entirely different game's Ultimate Edition upgrade. Now, of course, there is the other bunch, which is the Ezio collection, and thankfully it did fare better, but once again, you have that thing, especially with lighting, where it just didn't feel like all of the original artistic intent got in there. Reviews-wise, it did fare a bit better though, right? So you're looking at a 74 from critics, but only a 42 recommend, which is basically just people saying, it's fine. So, none of these were particularly successful, but it is important that we put them in the right context. These are not remakes. These are remasters, and of course, remasters were very much the thing back in the day, like especially with the PS4 generation. It seemed with the PS4 and the Xbox One, you had like hardware that was maybe a bit more easy to develop for, and there was quite a hunger in customers to get some of those older games onto the newer hardware. So that kind of thing happened quite a bit, but nowadays, well, Capcom has happened, and that's essentially set an entire new standard. So let's dive back into what Yves Guillemot said and essentially work out what we can expect here. Players can be excited about some remakes which will allow us to revisit some of the games we've created in the past and modernize them. There are worlds in some of our older Assassin's Creed games that are extremely rich. Now certainly if you were going to go to me and say, hey, Assassin's Creed, Black Flag, and we're just going to make something new in that continuity, I mean, I'd be pretty excited about that. And while Mirage certainly helped to scratch a little bit of like the original Altair itch, it would be kind of neat to see some other stuff with him in it that is also set in the like Crusades era. Anyway, so that's what they're doing, and obviously we're all thinking about the Resident Evil remakes in Capcom. And for Ubisoft, this is a blessing and a curse, because whenever Yves says remake, that actually makes me excited, because I think about some of these games that I loved when I was younger, and them getting the Resident Evil 4 treatment. Thing is though, it's also an extremely high bar, especially with Resi 4, and because that has essentially set the standard for like doing this right, well, that's what Ubisoft are going to be compared against. But the thing is, when we dive in at a more technical level, there's actually another comparison to make. So one of the things that's really helped Capcom is the Reach for the Moon engine. You'll commonly hear people just call it the RE engine because Reach for the Moon engine's a pretty insane name for a piece of software. Anyway, it's great, and that's essentially powered all of their modern output. Now, for Ubisoft, they've got Anvil, right? So Anvil is what they use for the Assassin's Creed games, as well as the likes of, say, Immortals, Phoenix Rising, which sadly is not going to be followed up on. But essentially, they have large teams that have worked a hell of a lot in that engine. It's a modern engine that is clearly quite flexible and very, very capable. I mean, hell, they even ended up in a funny situation with Assassin's Creed Unity where their engine was actually powering things that were amazingly cool. Problem is, it kept on breaking. But anyway, the cycle that they've been following is a full Assassin's Creed game being built, then the engine basically being updated and refined for the next game, just branching, updating, that kind of thing as they go on. Now, this is something we've talked about recently on the channel in the context of Total War and Creative Assembly, where a key problem in this model was them having loads of overlapping development. That meant that improvements made in some game projects did not get folded back into the core engine. So that's the struggle CA have had. For Ubisoft, it could be a little different, and this is where we've got to go to some of Insider Gaming's sources who have talked about Anvil Engine, which they actually now call Anvil Pipeline internally. This is from their article. Sources explain that Anvil Pipeline allows all of the various Assassin's Creed studios, of which there are many, to work from one unified branch rather than having different versions and branches. This means that moving forward, Assassin's Creed will benefit visually from the likes of ray trace, global illumination, and virtual geometry. The move to Anvil Pipeline has meant that the teams have had to completely overhaul everything in the series too, including animations, the parkour system, dynamic weather, and more. So, it seems to me that this approach is key to Ubisoft's plan, because the problem with the Assassin's Creed remasters is they were basically just doing a bit of a refurbishment, a little bit of new paint, but the actual gameplay wasn't any different. Thing is, when you look at Resident Evil 4, right, it's not just a modernization in technology, it also is a modernization in game feel, and that is what people will actually want here. It's the lack of that that explains the lukewarm reactions to the prior games that they did remasters of, and it's something that we can actually contrast with the far warmer approach to Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition. Yeah, we're probably all still wondering, where is Beyond Good and Evil 2? But anyway, that Anniversary Edition is overhauling the game and also making a point of adding in like loads of extra dev content to basically justify its existence. So if they can get close to what Capcom are doing, we could be cooking. Thing is though, they actually were in an insane cadence with Assassin's Creed back in the day. And the funny thing is, I remember this happening when I was younger, and we're actually now at the stage where loads of people may not even know that this kind of thing went down. And that problem is Assassin's Creed fatigue. This is what happened when they just had yearly releases, right? Yearly releases that didn't really shake up the gameplay a massive amount. And it's a bit of a strange thing, because if you take a game like, say, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, I know there's plenty of people who really like that, but again, it was just a victim of there being a new Assassin's Creed every single year, without fail, and really without enough innovation between them. I absolutely don't want that problem to happen again, and it seems that their strategy is that instead of just more Assassin's Creed, it's going to be more Assassin's Creed, but also different Assassin's Creed. That's something that Yves talked to when he pointed out that Assassin's Creed Hex is a very different experience to Assassin's Creed Shadows, and of course, if you look at Shadows and compare that to Mirage, well, yeah, those are obviously pretty different. They're maybe thinking that if they're just throwing in some remakes or maybe just new game experiences that are within the worlds of those remakes, that basically that is going to be more, but people will probably be happy to buy it as just an ongoing big live service Assassin's Creed forever, which is kind of what they'd already been doing with Valhalla. So you actually can see the logic. Like, it's really the direction lots of us thought they'd be going in whenever we first heard about Assassin's Creed Infinity, which was supposed to be the kind of like Assassin's Creed hub that all other Assassin's Creed lives inside. Now, we've actually found out recently from Stephen Totilo that it's no longer called Infinity, right? So Infinity's dead. Now it's Animus, which, in fairness, is actually straight up way better branding. So I suppose it brings us to a weird position then, because if you look at something like Call of Duty, for a while they were trying to have different Call of Duty every year, like different types of movement tech, you know, as you moved from, say, I think it was like Advanced Warfare to Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4, they were changing a hell of a lot. Or if you think about Total War, it seemed that between Historical, between Warhammer, and then also the Saga titles, that they basically just wanted to have that amazing yearly cadence. But again, they just had that problem where the Saga titles didn't really feel different enough, and the whole thing kind of ran aground. For Ubisoft, though, I think I can see what they're going for. If you like parkour and assassinations, then basically play Assassin's Creed Mirage. If you want something weird and different, go for Hex. If you want a just humongous open world, big, modern, expensive mega RPG, then, well, go play Shadow. And for the nostalgia play, they can just do full remakes of the Ezio games. I mean, hey, they could do a full remake of Assassin's Creed 1, but perhaps bulk out the experience, because we all know Assassin's Creed 1, while it was groundbreaking in many, many ways, it was also very, very repetitious. So actually, I think this plan could go somewhere, but it's all going to hinge on quality of execution. As an example, I remember seeing lots of people talk about just the sharpness of the dialogue, the care and attention put into cinematography and that sort of thing in a game like Assassin's Creed Mirage, and that basically being a fairly rough comparison when you actually just go and look at the Ezio games. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious it's because Mirage was a lower budget game, and a lot of the time lower budget just means there will be less work put into the camera angles. There'll be a bit less time in the script, that kind of thing. For me, though, that's kind of not enough. When I think about Assassin's Creed, I remember, sometimes goofy dialogue, but actually a lot of it was pretty damn sharp. It was sharp, it was engaging, there was a lot of intrigue, and just camera angles, cinematic flair. They did a real good job of all that. So if they can bring that level of quality and, I suppose, mastery of the craft to a pipeline like this, we could absolutely be cooking. And we know that Ubisoft have many studios. So they absolutely have got the headcount for this. But I'm just left, at the end of the day, thinking that naturally, as sizes get bigger and bigger and bigger, expertise dilutes, quality dilutes, talent dilutes. And it's not for any horrible reason. It's just, it's really, really hard to scale a team. And Ubisoft have got some of the most scaled up teams that you basically see in games production. So I suppose I'm definitely left with causes for concern, but on the other hand, this is a strong IP, and injecting some variety into that experience and then doing remasters, if they are Capcom quality. Anyway, that's pretty much us for this one. However, if you want to hear a tale of game executives losing their marbles, well, guess what? We got another video for you. So check it out next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you over there.